Hello again, and welcome to another discussion about the coronavirus crisis here from ITS UK. And before we get on with that, let me just remind you, please, to subscribe to our YouTube channel that you're watching at this moment, and then you'll get updates on all the great content we'll be posting over the weeks and months to come. I've got a great panel of ITS UK people talking today. So I'd like to welcome, first of all, the chair of ITS UK, who took over at the beginning of last month, who is Ryan Hood, and he's market lead at TRL. The new vice chair is Karla Jakeman of Innovate UK. She's connected transport innovation lead there. And we're also joined by Jenny Martin, who's not new to ITS UK. She's been with the organisation now for 22 years. And Jenny, let me start with you, because in 22 years of being involved in the organisation, I bet you've never seen anything like the last 6 weeks.
No, absolutely not, Paul. This really is unprecedented, possibly sometimes overused word. But I am jolly pleased that if this had to happen, which obviously it would be better if it didn't, but now it has happened. Thank goodness it's happening now and not in the year 2000 or the year 2010, because at least we're so well set up now for remote working, not reliant on a physical office anymore, that we're able to do very nearly business as usual, or at least business converted to different format, but just as good compared to what we usually do, which even 5-6 years ago, this would have hit us a lot harder.
I think, like everyone, I receive a lot of emails from different things I've subscribed with little hints and tips every week. And there's one I get every Monday that sent a load of ideas for what you could do to change your business model during the present crisis. And to be honest, when I looked at it, I thought, given ITS UK is quite a small organisation, we've been doing the same thing, slowly changing it over the years. We've actually changed quite a lot in this time, including, of course, exactly what we're doing right now with the webinars.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. When we have had ad hoc webinars over the years since the technology became available, but we were, I agree, I think we can pat ourselves on the back. We were able to ramp them up really very quickly, and we now have an excellent rolling program of technical webinars, the panel-based state of the world discussions like the one you're hosting right now, and of course your very popular evening quizzes, which is something where normally after a meeting we might go to the pub or go for a coffee. Now we have the quiz instead to fill the same purpose.
And Ryan, of course, you joined ITS UK Council as vice chair a couple of years ago, and it's convention, it doesn't always happen, but it's convention that the vice chair becomes the chair. What a time to take over chairing the council of the organisation.
Yes, as I've said fairly recently to the council, it's really interesting, and as Jenny says, unprecedented times. Not only do we have the traditional challenge of providing ITS systems, safety, cleaner, accessible, lean and efficient transport systems, and providing the funding, optimization and maintenance for those. We have, of course, these new disruptive technologies around connectivity, automation, electrification, the new business models that seem to be hitting every part and accelerating in the current climate in many cases, such as e-commerce. And of course, the explosion in data, open data, data science, artificial intelligence. And you add to that what was supposed to be the year of carbon and climate change, decarbonisation has now really become the year of de-COVIDisation, to coin a new phrase. And of course, for UK industry, we've also got the challenge over the next 12 months of the exit from Europe. So it's very interesting time. So I'm convinced as a community, as an organisation and as a team, we're up for it.
How's things at normal work in your day job then? How much has TRL had to adapt to suddenly serving some consultancies some solutions and suggestions on how to deal with the current crisis?
Well, I'll break that down into three areas, really. We've got the current projects that we're providing. There's then really future business, and then TRL's in a rather privileged position that we invest and undertake our own internal research and development. Now, on that first point about current projects, we have had postponements, just a small number of projects, and we've had to look at some particular staff roles that have been impacted where they can't, for instance, to go roadside or mix with the public. We have had some delays, again, in a small number of projects, but for the majority of our business, it's actually business as usual. It's, in many cases, the productivity has gone up with our staff. Perhaps because they don't have those regular distractions that they do in the office. From a future business perspective, that's also quite interesting because we have quite a broad client base. If I split it into three areas, really, you've got central and local government, then you've got the arm's length bodies such as Innovate UK and Highways England, and then you have the private sector. And we're seeing very different behaviours across those three sectors. In terms of government, central government, local government, clearly priorities have changed drastically, and there's a serious focus on the short term, and therefore we're having to adjust our services for how we provide for those short-term needs and the great deal of uncertainty in the future. But I have to say, when it comes to Highways England and Innovate UK, we've been really impressed with the way they've tried to support the industry at this time. But the private sector, because of the financial uncertainties, we've seen that pretty much dry up.
Yeah, I can imagine. And let's pick up with Karla Jakeman. First of all, Karla, welcome to ITS UK's leadership team now as you join the Council as Vice Chair. Again, what a great time to be doing it. But given that Innovate UK is probably one of the few organisations that actually has some money to spend at the moment, does that actually increase the pressure on you that you've got to spend really wisely where grants of money might go, because there'll be so many people almost calling you up with great ideas and suggestions for how they can help you spend your money?
Absolutely, and we have put, as I'm sure most people know, a call out, which was very much an emergency call for a response to COVID, and the response was huge, and we have had to try very hard to assess it as best we can under the circumstances to get some of these innovations out as quickly as possible. And I think it's picking up on what Ryan said, really. I think that the market have adapted very quickly, and we've seen people with existing innovations adapt their existing innovations to now support the COVID war effort, if you like. And we've seen some amazing projects that have come through. So I think we do need to be very careful where the money goes, and there is an incredible amount of work going on behind the scenes to make sure that that is spent very wisely for the public purse.
And I guess that's the point, isn't it? That it's got to be spent wisely, because everybody says, oh, well, the government should fund this, the government can pay for this, the government can pay for that. But of course, we've got to remember, governments actually don't have any money. The only money governments have actually comes from the taxpayer. And given that if the economy crashes anything like as badly as people are predicting it could be, the tax take is going to go down. So the tax spend has got to be on projects that are really going to deliver over and over again.
We're going to have to really focus on that, but there is also opportunity, though, to look at existing projects where money's already been spent, so we're not recreating the wheel, and that we're able to reuse some of that existing information and data that we've already gathered, so that we can really utilize it and maximize it more than we would have done before, as we see new opportunities where we think, actually, we've done something like this before. Can we just rehash that slightly and reutilize it in a new scenario?
And of course, all of you, one of the issues we have is that actually we have no real idea what transport's going to look like after all of this. I was watching a webinar on Wednesday night from our friends at ITS Canada, and they had the president of Aimson on there saying basically tear up and throw away all your transport models that have looked forward 20 years into the future on how things are going to look, because we now don't really know what's going to happen 5 years in the future, but basically we're just going to have to start again with all the planning. So how difficult is that, or is it quite actually a welcome opportunity to press the reset button?
I think understanding that future demand is critical, but there's so much uncertainty around it. You know, if you think about it in time horizons, we've got the position right now. And clearly, we're trying to consider how we support the ITS industry right now. We're going to have some kind of, let's call it, transition phase, and then we're going to have, you know, what people are referring to as the new normal. Clearly, walking and cycling is booming at the moment. People are avoiding public transport. When people are using their cars, they are tending to use those in preference to using public transport. There may be, and I think we as an industry and a society have a job to explore this. There are probably some underlying themes that we can predict right now. And we've seen the boom in e-commerce. That's probably going to lead to an increase in electric vans being purchased in the future. There is this thought about touchless technology, people not wanting to touch things so much in the future. So that's going to push on new remote sensor technologies. So I think we as an industry, we've got this job to do to collectively think through what these new emerging threads are.
Jenny, Ryan mentioned about different organisations being able to cope in different ways and the pressures on the private sector. What has ITS UK been able to do, and how has it supported private sector members that maybe have had to furlough staff or been facing real severe worries about when and how they'll be able to pay the bills in the future?
We had already programmed an increase in subscriptions from the 1st of April, which we have now postponed for at least 3 months into the future, because it's not the right time to be increasing costs when so many of our private sector members, particularly the smaller ones, either are struggling or are worried about struggles they might have in the future, depending on their specific nature of business and their clients, what situation the clients might find themselves in. We also contacted all the members individually and basically posed the question, what can we're here for you, what would you like us to do? We had a few very concrete specific requests back, which of course we've acted on, but certainly the feedback I got from the members I contacted was more that they were very pleased that someone had thought about them and had got in touch and had shown an interest, which I think was good. I mean, that's one of the good things about ITS UK is a benefit of being small is that you have that slightly more personal relationship with a lot of the members. And I think what we're doing through these informal contacts is we're gathering a picture of what's happening to our very different types of members, what their hopes and fears are for the future. And of course, the Department for Transport, which is already a member and an executive member, they are very interested in getting that sort of feedback, because they in turn, I'm sure, are having to write massive numbers of large reports to other parts of the government, like Number 10 and like the Treasury, seeking assistance for the transport sector generally and ITS specifically, and that's something we can help them with. And
that's a key thing that I think ITS UK as an organisation can deliver on behalf of the members. If an individual member tried to report to the Department for Transport or the Treasury or the government as a whole, you know, to write to Boris Johnson or whatever, chances of that actually reaching the person you want is really, really slim. Whereas if we group together and put forward some of the ideas and the fears of the industry as a whole, we're far more likely to be heard.
No, absolutely, I agree with that, and I think, you know, Karla from the work that she does would probably agree that, you know, in her case, everybody's idea is brilliant and everybody's need for funding is the greatest. And in our case, of course, each member has the biggest problems, it needs the largest subsidy and the best access to help and funding. And so I think that the people who hold the funding are sometimes quite right to you know, take quite a harsh approach and scrutinize quite strongly. But if you get somebody like ITS UK who can synthesize the hopes and the fears and the requests from the whole sector, I think that gives it quite a lot of extra credibility.
Yeah, I think, Karla, in some of the previous webinars we've had some interesting stories about solutions that our members have been coming up with. So, for example, Grid Smarter Cities have their delivery system they've been planning for ages, but can now be delivered at a point that's really needed. We spoke to Unoptic about how they've changed some of the analysis from their roadside infrastructure to help us understand travel and movement rather than just enforcement. And I spoke to a new member only yesterday about the fact that they're coming up with a new parking solution that is completely contactless, that just uses ANPR and an app on your phone. You don't have to have a ticket, you don't have to touch a machine or anything. So we've seen some positive ideas coming out of our members already. But you mentioned some of the clever ideas that have been put forward to you and been really impressed with them. Without giving any specifics, what sorts of innovations are people putting forward?
We have had a variety of applications with regards to how to do deliveries, how to do contactless deliveries, drone deliveries. We've had a lot of aspects like that. We've had a lot of social innovations, so how we can stop people being lonely and affecting some of the mental health issues. We have had innovations around getting items from people to people who need them in vulnerable sectors. So we've, as well as your innovations to look after some of the SMEs so that they've got a better app going forward so that they can work in a different way and things like that. So we can, through the amount of innovations that we've seen, you can really see people are trying to really find solutions, not just to their situation, but to other situations that they know people are in.
And how does it work if somebody's got a brand new idea? So, you know, imagine you were planning a startup in February and you were just putting together all your slide decks to go and see the venture caps, and then all this happened. Can they even be entertained at the moment, or do you need to be some sort of established in order to get on your radar?
So for the recent competition that has just closed, they could absolutely have been entitled to apply for it, and there will probably be more funding opportunities going forward. Can't speak too much about that at the moment. But there are also lots of opportunities where people are contacting us directly, and we have a dedicated email address now, which we are using to an internal email address, which we are using to share some of those good ideas to make sure they get in front of the right people. And as innovation leads, we are all very busy when we see a really good idea. Rather than just saying, well, that's a great idea, it's a shame it's happened now, we are doing our best to get it onto the right desk, because you never know, that could be the exact solution that someone in government is looking for at the moment.
Okay, so where do you think we're going to end up as and when this is over? And I think we've all now realized this, there is not going to be an off switch like there was the on switch at the end of March. It's going to be a much more gradual position to one day we'll suddenly think, actually, I think it's all over now. But where do you think we're going to be as an intelligent transport systems industry in the UK? Are we going to be really vital because technology is going to provide the efficient and cost-effective solution? Or is there a potential that actually the big infrastructure projects are the things that governments often fall back on in times of recession because they're job creating and long term, so they're far better and easier to justify borrowing to fund?
I think you're going to have a mix at the moment, and one of the great things about the smaller industries is their agility. And one thing that we really need at the minute is people to be agile, to turn things around quickly, which some of the bigger organisations find trickier. So certainly from existing projects we have tended to find that the smaller organisations tend to be the more agile ones. So we're going to need all sorts of different types of organisations to get us to whatever that new normal is.
I mean, it all comes down to demand and future travel demand, and how that's going to change over what I've said previously. Three phases, essentially: the now, the transition, and the new normal. Which I don't see the new normal really being with us until the government finds a vaccine. So that period is going to be a 12-month period. Now, we're going to change, the travel demand patterns are going to change during that period. I suspect that that transition period, there will be still significant disruption, social distancing measures in place, people where they can still expected to work from home. And of course, that will have an impact on travel patterns. And of course, public transport, people not really willing to do that. There will be impact on these new business models around shared mobility, because people at the moment don't really want to share. So it is an interesting time, but I think us as an industry, there are three things in my mind that ITS UK can do at the moment, and that's try to help the industry understand what these phases, essentially what they will look like, in order to understand the demand on their business. In addition to that, it's to help influence government policy in response to that. And as you referred to earlier, there's going to be a competition and a great deal of uncertainty around future funding for ITS and broader transport infrastructure. So we need to help the government and private industry identify the opportunities within that. The second thing really I think we can do is referred to earlier as well, is to speak to the government and other stakeholders with one voice. And I think that places ITS UK in a fairly unique position, as we've done through our previous engagement with the industry. And I think we should continue to do that in taking the pulse of our members and the wider industry. And then the third thing really that I believe we as ITS UK can continue to do, which has started, and I've been really impressed with it, is this digital transformation, creating the platforms the digital platforms for our members to be able to put forward thoughts and ideas, to be able to promote their wares, to network and to socialize at this time. And I think we should continue to do that. We should continue to do more of it. And I've been really impressed with it to date.
And Jenny, you and I spend an awful lot of time on trains traveling to events here, there and everywhere. And I never thought I would admit that actually I really miss it. But I think part of the new normal is there will be far more of this where we're talking virtually and less meeting in person. Now, I still think there will be a lot of room for smaller meetings, forum meetings where we meet in person, because I think the interpersonal contact is important, the networking is important, and you get as much out of the conversation you have during the coffee as you do out of the sessions. But we've seen the ITS European Congress get called off. We've seen the Intertraffic event moment. Seeing is believing. They've both gone. We've got to question what's going to happen with Los Angeles in October for the World Congress. Is the ITS industry ever going to get back to those big events again?
I think the short answer to that is no. I think it's all part of the bigger picture. Everybody, not just in the UK, but more or less everybody in the world, has had their travel pattern forcibly reset. All the things we thought were essential, we can't do, and we're finding that life goes on, and we're still managing to do largely what we need to do without all this travel that we thought was totally essential. I don't think, in terms of the ITS industry, no different to any other industry, I think we'll find that we will do a lot of our networking, our contact building, our contact maintenance, all of which continue to be essential, but we'll be doing them in this sort of format. And I don't want to be rude to anyone on the call, but for young people, I believe this is already how they do those things anyway. So it's, to an extent, maybe it's going to be harder for those of us over 40, but I think it's going to have to be done because the world really has changed. And going back to the earlier point about the transport future, the ITS future, I really like to think that when we come out of this, we'll be coming out of it in a policy-led way. So the mantra isn't going to be how can we get back to normal? The mantra is going to be how can we create a new normal, which is actually better for everybody, better for society, better for the economy, better for the planet and the environment. And I really look forward to ITS UK and the UK ITS sector playing its part in this. We have world-leading expertise in this country, and I really look forward to seeing that being applied.
It's interesting that I, as you know, often quote a fantastic presentation that the behavioural scientist Rory Sutherland gave at the IET a couple of years ago, where he pointed out the craziness of the rail season ticket in the 21st century and said it needed to be changed. And I think, it was being ignored. People were just happy to carry on the way they always had. I can't see rail season tickets being the same again, because I can't see people getting on a train, commuting to the office, spending 8 hours in the office and then commuting home again 5 days a week, ever being the normal for anyone. It works if you're in a factory, you need to go to offices for meetings, but that's just one really simple example of where things for travel will change in the future.
Yeah, I think and that's another ITS opportunity. If in the short term, as I believe, we're actually going to have to ration transport use in the bigger cities in order to be able to carry on with the social distancing that we need to do, then the people going to the top of the queue are going to be the cleaners and the shop workers and the teachers and the factory workers. It's not going to be us who normally would go to an office. We're going to be expected to stay at home and make way for those people. And things like access control and monitoring movements, ticket sales, journey planning, all those things. And there are great opportunities there for using what we already know how to do, but in a completely different way.
Okay, right. We have a couple of minutes left. We're nearly out of time. So let's wrap up today's webinar with a few words of wisdom and hopefully some hope from our new vice chair and chair. So we'll hear from Ryan in a moment. But first, Karla, give our viewers some hope about the future as far as our industry is concerned.
Okay, so I think that we have a real opportunity now. I'm ever the optimist, which is very difficult at the moment, but I am ever the optimist. I don't think we will be resetting the button because I think that we have such a brilliant foundation in this country for all of the great innovations around ITS. We have a fantastic foundation which we can build on. We might need to tweak things, we might need to adapt things, but I think that because we have that foundation already, which we as an industry we've worked really hard on over the last few years, that is really good grounding, that we can work on that in a more aligned way, I hope, going back to what Jenny was saying. And I think as a result of that, we will see some real opportunities, and we will also be able to more effectively support some of those areas which are really going to need our support. So I think it's twofold really. We can support those who need it, but we can also really look at those opportunities and make the best of them.
I think
Right.
I just second that. I think we've got to look for the opportunities in the current crisis. Never waste a good crisis, a wise man once told me, and I think that's absolutely what we've got to do. And we, as ITS UK and the industry, have a job to search those out. But as I mentioned earlier, there are clearly opportunities emerging around touchless and contactless payments. There are massive opportunities to do with the influx around and the opening up of data. We've seen a lot of use around open data, the speed with which the Department for Transport has pulled together different data sources. That's something we can't go back on now. We've created those open sources, and we need to push on that.
Very pleased to say, Ryan, that ITS UK was instrumental in helping DFT pull together those information sources. So I'm very proud of something concrete that we've done during the last few weeks of the crisis. And some words of optimism from our chair and vice chair rounds off today's webinar on the current coronavirus crisis. And just a reminder from ITS UK that if you really are in trouble, struggling, or just need some sort of idea, some sort of help to bounce ideas off, then that's exactly what ITS UK is for. From the biggest Department for Transport member to a single person micro SME, we're here to help, and so get in touch with us at the Secretariat. That's all the time we've got for this webinar, so I'll just take the time to thank very much Secretary General Jenny Martin, Chair Ryan Hood, and new Vice Chair Karla Jakeman, and thank you ever so much for watching, and we'll catch you again soon for another webinar from ITS UK.